Ignition sequence has started. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
You have entered Untold Radio AM. And now broadcasting from a secret location, your hosts, Joel Sturgis and Doug Hajicek. And welcome to this edition of Untold Radio. I'm your host, Joel Sturgis. Right along with me, as always, is Mr. Doug Hajicek. Oh, Doug, how's your week so far, sir?
It's been weird.
It has been odd. It has been odd. And tonight we have a very special engineer on board with us, Mr. Michael O'Neill. Being our intrepid engineer, he's stepping in for me a little bit because I am, believe it or not, because I sound so great, I'm sure I do, a little bit under the weather. So I am battling what I hope is not anything serious. But anyhow, that's what's going on this end. I know you said your day has been odd as well. It has been just strange. I could have swore it's Friday the 13th all day by all the weird things going on.
Yeah, to me it was just, I don't know, it's like the Twilight Zone the entire day. From the calls I got to the weird emails. It just started out weird. I could write a book on just today. It's so weird I don't even want to talk about it.
Do you ever have those days when you wake up in the morning, you feel like your whole day has been a dream?
Yeah.
Like just kind of foggy, you know, like nothing feels right. Or have you ever had a strong sense of deja vu?
Yes. It's happened to me. Actually, the deja vu has happened to me only a few times, but when it's happened, it's been so strong.
Right? That's what just happened. No kidding. 2 minutes ago, before the show, I said, uh-oh. I've seen this movie before.
Oh, no.
But the bad part is about deja vu, Doug, for me anyway, maybe not for you, maybe not for the listeners, but it's deja vu of the inconsequential. It doesn't like fill in any real pieces for you.
Yeah. And deja vu it's so real that you swear to God you're in the Groundhog Day movie. You know, you just know it's happened. It's not like you think maybe it's happened. It's like this just happened. You know, and I remember every moment of.
Yeah.
But you had asked about like days that feel like a Twilight Zone. I spent a month in Europe and just traveled and hitchhiked and just rented a car, totally off the beaten path. You know, in countries like Liechtenstein and Switzerland and Holland and, you know, Germany and so on, in Austria. But I have memories after I got back, especially, that seemed like there's no way they could have happened. They must have been a dream.
Really?
You know, like waking up in the middle of the night and remember seeing a big St. Bernard attacking a postman out the window and all these people gathered around in a circle just watching this big St. Bernard with this postman up against the wall, but then you have no memories as to how it resolved. You don't know how it ended.
Wow.
So you go back to bed and you kind of wake up.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
And you see the St. Bernard and he growled at me.
And you're like, I know all this.
Okay, maybe that wasn't a dream. You know, and I can remember, nights like going, you know, trying to find a place to eat. The fog, just like out of the American Werewolf movie. Mm-hmm. Walking through Switzerland in the thick fog, no idea where you are, don't even know where your hotel is anymore. And of course, I'm staying in an old castle. And then you go into a restaurant and there's nobody there, and you see a hamburger on the menu, and you're thinking, "Ooh, American food," and you order it, and all of a sudden, here comes this big giant pork, what you think is pork, a big giant meatball with a fried egg on top.
You're like, you didn't stop into the slaughtered lamb by any chance.
Like, you have no idea. It looks kind of bloody, but it's got a fried egg on top. And you were just expecting a hamburger, right? And you don't want to even you don't want to eat it because you have no idea. It's so bizarre. And then you just kind of quietly leave. You leave money on the table. You have no idea even how much money you've left. You just want to get out.
Yeah, you just want to run.
Yeah, and then I spent hours trying to find my hotel, this like old restored castle I was staying in, that I was probably the only guest. And then I tried to get up the stairway, and that St. Bernard was guarding a display case of like war medals and stuff. And there were some swords and so on. And the dog attacked me because I was going to take
No way.
I was going to take a picture of the display case, right? But these are the kinds of things that happen to you if you travel alone in Europe and you just kind of get off the beaten tourist path.
Yeah.
And it's just, you have memories and you're still like, did that really happen?
So this dog actually attacked you. You had all this stuff go on. You saw. Now I got a question. When it comes to deja vu, there's lots of theories, but do you think it's a form of a time slip? I mean, there has to be something behind that. It
almost seems that way because I have experienced some really weird time glitches where you're with somebody. And okay, I'll tell you one story, just one quick story. I'm up for a family reunion up in your neck of the woods. And I'm with my daughter, and we get off the elevator. Or no, we're waiting to get on the elevator. Mm-hmm. And this big family comes off the elevator, and they were all very distinct looking. They come off the elevator, and, we get on the elevator, go down, go to the front door, which is just a few feet away, get out in the parking lot, and here comes that same family walking towards us.
It has to be a time slip at that point.
My daughter looked at me, and she just goes, glitch?
Yeah, it has to be. Is there any other explanation that you can think of?
No, there was no other. There's no way there was another family that looked just like them.
Yeah, because I've experienced similar situations where you swear to God you've seen this before, you've experienced this before, but I have never experienced to the extent that you're talking about with the elevator, where you all experienced it together. And then you saw the family coming off the elevator after the fact, and you all look at each other, and you're all cognitive of what's going on right in front of you.
They were on their way to the elevator, but we had watched them get off the elevator.
Yeah.
And so for my, 16-year-old daughter to look at me and go, say one word, glitch.
Yeah. I have experienced, now a lot of listeners throughout the years have sent me emails about their own experiences of strange time slips. And I'm becoming more and more convinced they're real, that there are moments in time that just slip a little bit. A couple of them, of course, deal with establishments that are open, but then they're closed and they go back days later, boarded up, stuff like that. Little stories from people that would have nothing to gain for spinning this big yarn to me about how they were in this bar and it was pretty mundane and they decided to stop back on their way home, and here it's been boarded up, and it looks like it's been boarded up for 20 years.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So there's really nothing to really grab onto there. I mean, it has to be a time slip. Yeah.
So many of these cases, these people are with other people. They all experience the same thing. So it's not like... Mm-hmm. It's just one person's story.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
because like your case, you had multiple witnesses. Your family was with you for that glitch.
Yeah,
so
it's just
who knows?
But not everybody notices them because you have to be observant to notice. Because I'm always paying attention. I don't care where I am. I'm always aware and alert and know my surroundings and know what's behind me. There was another one that was really interesting. In fact, the guy that I was with brought it up recently. We were driving up north on the freeway on Labor Day or Memorial Day. I think it was Memorial Day weekend. And you know how that goes. We're stuck in traffic.
Yeah.
There's a couple with their car overheated up ahead of us. I pulled over to the side of the road, and the gentleman is running down the ditch with a bucket to get water out of the ditch to put in his radiator.
Mm-hmm.
And we kind of inch forward, and we see a car pulled up ahead of us. And we get up there, and we see the guy run down into the ditch.
Again.
To get a bucket of water. It's the exact same scene. And he looked at me, and he said, did you just see that? And I said, yeah. And there's no way they could have got up in front of us.
Yeah. Same guy, same car, running to get water for his radiator.
Yep.
You saw him twice in a row.
Yep. And had a witness.
At that point, do you stop at that point? The car, pull it over, and just observe for a minute?
No,
what do you do with that information? Yeah.
Just keep moving, Joel.
You never know. It could be a Twilight Zone thing, and you'd be sucked in. Next thing you know, it'd be Doug Hajicek from the Twilight Zone, and that would be bad.
Next thing you know, Dave Politis is writing about me.
Right. He was a nice guy. Everybody liked him. He disappeared off the face of the earth.
Could happen, but life is full of little mysteries like that. They're not always, great and dramatic. They're just little things. But I think a lot of us experience those things, but we don't say anything, or we just put it up. We kind of just forget about it. We put it in our gray basket.
Do you remember when Billy Graham died, the preacher? I would say, 2 years ago, a year ago? It was a big deal.
Yes.
They had a big. I could have swore to God that, no pun intended, because he was a man of God, but I could have swore that he died 5 or 6 years ago, and I watched his funeral. The weirdest thing, and that brings me to maybe a little mini subject, or at least a very large subject.
The Mandela.
Have you ever heard? Yes, exactly. I was going to ask you, Doug. Have you ever heard of the Mandela effect?
Oh God, yes.
I
think I invented it.
The Hajicek effect.
I've been talking about the Mandela effect for years, long before there was a term for it. Truth.
So, what's your take on that? Because I've noticed it more and more throughout the years.
It's either the way we remember things, or it's real. It's one or the other. There's no real in between. So it's either very real, but what makes you really wonder about it is the fact so many of us share these, same stories. Like we thought that something was spelled a certain way, and then all of a sudden someone brings it to everybody's attention. No, it's spelled this way. Yet you remember it spelled the other way. It's close, but no cigar. It's just a little different.
I know the Berenstain Bears.
Yes.
Is the one that everybody points to. Is it Berenstein or Berenstain? Now I remember is the Berenstein Bears.
Yes,
me
too.
But now everybody tells me it's the Berenstain Bears. So it's just one of those little things, but it's never anything giant. It's just small little shifts that make you question your own sanity after a while.
Exactly. Like, for instance, when I talk about, me observing this Mandela effect, there's many times like I'll be looking for a certain tool in my workshop. And I'll know it's a red wrench with a red plastic dip handle on it. And then I can't find it. And then when I finally find it, it's a blue wrench. Yeah. It's tiny. It's like not a big deal, but it drives me nuts.
Yeah. Because deep down inside yourself, that thing was yellow.
Joel, some of these things, you use something 10 years, it's got a red handle on it. Now it's blue. And you're like, it's the Mandela effect.
It is we'll do a whole show. And if you guys are listening, you don't know what the Mandela effect is, go ahead, Google that, because it is far too deep for us to cover the next 15 minutes. I mean, it is a very deep subject. But if that's something you guys would like to hear about, we'd be more than happy to do a show on it with with Doug, and we'll get a guest on, stuff like that, because there's some real scientific theories behind it that are emerging as well. Why we believe what we believe and how it's working, how our brains are processing that information. So it very well could be that we're just, going a little crazy. Who knows? Or it could be real. We just don't know. But moving along, SpaceX is getting ready to go to the Mars there, Doug. SpaceX is almost ready to start building a permanent human settlement on Mars with massive Starship rockets. The private space flight company is on track to launch its first uncrewed mission to Mars. That's important. As little as 4 years from now, SpaceX founder and CEO Elon Musk said Friday to the International Mars Society Convention, I think we have a fighting chance to make that second Mars transfer window. Musk said in a discussion with Mars Society founder Robert Zubrin. Sorry, excuse me. You can watch the replay, of course. It's out there if you want to see the whole speech. But getting to let's boil it down for a minute. Do you believe, Doug, because I know you follow science and space science pretty closely, are we anywhere near Mars colonization? And how far do you think we're out from that?
Well, personally, I think it's a bunch of hype to keep stock prices going.
Artificially inflating the stock?
Well, it crosses my mind. You talk about the Mandela effect. I swear to God, I keep hearing this every 4 years. It's almost 4 years away. And yet we never leave. And I don't know, I would love it to happen. I mean, it's a dream for all of us to actually get live footage, with a human holding the camera, where people can interact and say, hey, go over the other side of that hill and show us what's,
Yeah.
Instead of these rovers that take months to go 2 feet.
Do you remember a few years back when they're looking for people to hire to actually go to Mars, should it go off? But the caveat is it's a one-way trip. When you leave, you're never coming back to Earth. Now, if that same offer was extended to you today, would you go? Would you leave everything behind here to go to Mars?
No.
Me neither.
Heck
Me
no.
neither. That did not take you long to answer that either.
Who would actually volunteer for that? You got to kind of wonder.
Yeah.
They should at least wait until they can bring them back. To me, they shouldn't do a one-way mission. It's my opinion.
Because you're dooming these people in some ways. I mean,
right.
they go. It's a one-way deal, and what if it's not the trip that you signed on for? And it's instead you're like Gilligan Island. You're like Gilligan screaming, "Hey, find me." You're kind of really screwed. I wouldn't go either.
It actually doesn't make sense. If you have the technology.
Introducing Peacock, the new free streaming service from NBC Universal. It's hit movies, current shows, live sports, trending bits, and timeless hits. And that's why you can't not watch. Peacock. Watch for free. Upgrade for more. Stream now at peacocktv.com. Law & Order SVU streaming now. Whatever you're funny, Peacock's got it exclusively. Stream classic sitcoms like The Office, Parks and Recreation, and 2.5 Men. Plus, catch Peacock original comedies like AP Bio and Saved by the Bell. For all your exclusive comedy faves, go to peacocktv.com and get started.
To get there, all you have to do is build it bigger to carry the payload to get you back home. Mm-hmm. So it's just a matter of scaling up.
So it's kind of like more money to get home because we have the technology, I'm going to assume. When we get there, we obviously have to get back.
Yeah. So I would rather have them wait until they can bring people home.
Yeah, I think that would be the prudent thing to do.
Unless.
And the nice thing, too, on top of it, hey, by the way, we're going to send you to Mars, but we decided we're going to let you come home. If you don't like it there, let us know, and we'll ferry you guys back.
I do fantasize about a few people that would be nice to get on that rocket ship. Wave goodbye.
Turn it into a colony of the undesirables and send them all to Mars.
Something like that. Some people like them.
Yeah, some people just need to be sent to the island.
And Joel, I know this is the last week I've got to look at your white headphones.
It is the last
I was thinking we could send those to Mars. What do you think?
I gotta say, I don't hate my white headphones. I don't hate them. I would in some ways miss them, but in other ways they must go because you have brought this to my attention, the white headphones, and since you've done this, you did week 1. I have received a few, not many, but a few people harassing me about my white headphones.
Good.
So I will leave these behind, and we will be next week broadcast with a black pair of headphones.
So Joel, you see that little spot in your studio right behind you? I would like to see them mounted and framed right there.
Well, why framed? I mean, they're so beautiful, though, Doug.
Well, put
they're
them
so
in,
beautiful.
some kind of a frame, with a plaque.
Should I put a display light in there? That way,
yes, with
never's dark.
Yes. So then I have to look at them continually. If you were smart, you would do that for me.
Well, I just don't know if I wanted to put that kind of time and effort into it.
Hey, I want to talk about our guest coming up.
Yes, let's talk about our guest. We have a huge guest on tap tonight. Ginormous, my friend. And that is Dr. Lynn Rogers is joining us. Now, Lynn Rogers is a biologist, but get this, he's the man that walks with bears. This guy has revolutionized. Dr. Lynn Rogers has revolutionized the way that we view black bears and bear habitat and the way that they interact in their own little societies. This guy he's done it all as far as the bear community goes. He has really opened a lot of eyes. I think his research has become invaluable to many people. And we get the opportunity at the bottom of this hour here at 7:30 our time. And if you're in the East Coast listening right now, that, of course, would be 8:30 your time. We will be speaking with Dr. Lynn Rogers. I am very excited.
Yeah, me too. Could you imagine? This is a man that will follow wild black bears. He's actually slept in the forest alone with a black bear numerous times. I want you to picture the audience. Picture yourself going in the woods at night without a flashlight and sleeping with a black bear.
Just you and the bear hanging out together.
Yeah, think about that. That's incredible.
Now you filmed the movie Walking with Bears, starring,
yes,
of course, Dr. Lynn Rogers.
Yep.
And when you met Lynn, how did that meeting come about? How did you end up meeting Lynn and then going from that point to that point? Before we bring him on, tell us your backstory with Lynn Rogers.
Oh, let's see. Okay. I was working for, I think it was Channel 4 at that time. It was CBS affiliate, and was going up to interview Lynn. And of course, doing that is kind of different because, you're not just going to meet Lynn, you're going to meet black bears, like not in cages. And so I remember we were staying in a motorhome, parked somewhere up in Ely. And he said, well, I'll be there at, I'll find you guys and I'll be there at like 5 a.m. And it's pouring rain. And so 5 a.m. sharp, knock on the camper door and we open it up and, we can barely see and he's ready to go to start following some radio collar bear he had so we could find him, And it was just a downpour. And I think the bear's name was Terry at that point. If I'm wrong, he'll correct us. But I'll never forget the first time I got a glimpse of this bear that we were, had followed. She was a little spooked because we had myself and I think 2 other camera people. And so we did get a good glimpse of the bear, pretty close range. But then the bear was a little bit spooked because it wasn't just Lynn.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. That was it.
Wow.
It was a cool experience. And I thought, man, this guy's gone over the edge.
This guy's the bear whisperer. I mean, he gets close, like petting them close.
Well, he doesn't pet them because I think from what I learned, I could be wrong, that in black bear language, when you pet a bear, that's a sign of aggression.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
But what he does, he tries to just kind of blend in. He just becomes part of the woodwork. So the bear is not really necessarily trusting him, but not distrusting him. And the bears are constantly, I would imagine, monitoring his demeanor. Is he a friend? Is he a foe? Is he a friend? Is he a foe? Like many wild animals do. And as long as he maintains his little bit of distance, at 3
social
foot.
distancing.
Yep.
Dr. Lynn Rogers started it first. He was social distancing.
Yeah, and it's all it takes. And then he, would just count every bite that they would eat. But he'll talk about all this.
Yeah, that would be very interesting. Of course, that'll be the bottom of this hour, just coming up here in just about 4 minutes. I know Lynn Rogers as well. I happen to live not far from where he is. He's in Ely, Minnesota. I am in Gilbert, Minnesota. which is about 45 minutes away from him. I have visited the International Bear Center many times over the years. And I like taking the kids there, and I like going there because it's just so much information. So if you do find yourself in Ely,
the North American Bear Center.
So we call it the Bear Center up here. So North American Bear Center. Around here, if you're from here, you'll know what I'm talking about when we say the Bear Center. If you're local to here, that's the North American Bear Center. I learn a lot every time I go there. It's interesting. The kids love going there. They love to see the prehistoric bear, too, that they have an exhibit over there. So it's always a good time. So what do you think with Doug, while you're filming it, though? Because it was a big movie. It still is a big movie. The Man That Walks the Bears.
Yeah, a lot. Oh my gosh. Just it was insane. I mean, the whole thing was kind of a.
How long did it take to shoot? Yeah. How long did it take to shoot that movie? Yeah.
We put cameras in bear dens. We built a cub probe so we could film underneath a nursing mother.
That's amazing.
Yeah, that was really cool.
No.
I mean,
I was going to say, how do you get the camera under the nursing mother without arousing her suspicion?
So I built a big, long, articulating rod that was about...
And we have him coming in right now. Let's go to break, and we'll be right back with Dr. Lynn Rogers.
Hi, Tom Bodette. If you can hear me, then you have an internet connection, which means you can do cool things online, like listen to streaming radio, obviously, or watch a video of a monkey washing a cat. Let your freak flag fly. Or you can book a room at a great price at Motel6.com. Isn't the internet wonderful? Everything you want right at your fingertips, and whoa, did not need to see that. I'm Tom Bodette for Motel 6, and we'll leave the light on for you.
Unexpected reactions to smart financial decisions brought to you by feedthepig.org.
Well, I finally did it. My student loan is totally paid off.
I can't believe it.
I can't believe it either. I paid more than the minimum each month, and soon enough, it was gone.
So you're just giving up?
Giving up on what?
The life of luxury. Egyptian cotton, caviar Thursdays, designer everything.
What are you talking about?
Our plan. What happened to winning the lottery and mastering the art of the perfect mimosa? Hosting galas, wearing enough jewelry to require a bodyguard, vacationing in the French Riviera, and then buying it.
I just thought maybe it was time to prepare for my future. Set some financial goals, make some smart investments, open a 401k.
Financial goals? Investments? A 401k? You are horrifying right now. Listen, if winning the lottery were easy, everyone would do it.
When it comes to financial stability, don't get left behind. Get tools and tips for saving at feedthepig.org. This message brought to you by the American Institute of CPAs and the Ad Council.
Northern Tool and Equipment.
So me and the boys head out to tailgate today and find some other fans in our spot.
Well, it happens.
Cheering for the wrong team.
Oh, this is war.
Even worse, they've got this couch set up and everything.
A couch?
Yeah, it's sectional.
All right, first thing, don't ever use the word sectional again.
Done.
Second, I want you to grab a 4,700-pound tow chain with J-hook and grab hammer. Throw that on the back of your truck.
Got it.
Now you're going to Hail Mary the J-hook over the end of that couch. Time to find a better spot for your new friends.
That should do it.
There's no problem a little horsepower can't solve. Northern Tool and Equipment.
Taking a family of 5 to the amusement park can cost a small fortune.
Oh, yeah. So to save some money, we thought, hey, let's bring the amusement park to us. Yeah. Go ahead.
All right. Step right up, young man. Are you ready to ride the wacky waterfall?
That's just the bathtub with the shower head running.
Nope, it's the wacky waterfall.
It's the shower, Dad.
Waterfall.
Wacky.
There's an easier way to save. To get a free rate quote, go to geico.com. Then buy online, over the phone, or at your local Geico office.
Green light. Hey, girl. School zone. I'm getting hungry. Car changing lanes. You want to meet me for pizza? Stop sign. Intersection clear. Yeah, street. Pizza sounds good. Ballin Street? Girlin Street!
It's hard to concentrate on two things at once, like texting and driving. Stop the text, stop the wrecks. How will you stop texting and driving? Tell us at stoptextstoprex.org. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Welcome back to Untold Radio. I'm your host, Joel Sturgis. Right along with me is Mr. Doug Hajicek. And tonight, we have a real treat for everybody tuning in. We have Dr. Lynn Rogers, PhD, sitting in with us. And he is truly the man that walks with bears. He has been researching bears since 1967, originally hailing from Michigan, where he began his work in researching black bears, and he has since moved to Ely, Minnesota, where he continues his work, and he is the founder of the North American Bear Center, and we have a lot of fun, our family, let me just aside, going into that place. I am actually very, very excited. I've always wanted to interview you, Mr. Rogers. But this is the first time I've been able to do that. And so, Lynn, thank you so much for coming on Untold Radio. And without any further ado, you really, I got to, off the top, why bears, Dr. Lynn? What? I mean, they kind of seem scary to me.
Oh,
so are they?
You're reminding me of childhood stuff, because I grew up afraid of bears. But as a kid, everything I was afraid of, I tried to investigate. And, I'd be afraid of snakes. So I caught every snake I saw. And I found they were not like people thought. Snapping turtles, they were told they could bite off a finger. And I would swim underwater with a mask and flippers and catch them by the tail. And, of course, they would try to snap back, but they couldn't reach their tail. And then when I would let them go, they just wanted to get away. They were not aggressive at all. And then, with bumblebees, the biggest bee, scary. But then I found that I could cup them like they're on a flower. I could cup my two hands around them and move my hands away with the bee in it. They would just buzz around inside my hands, never stung me. Then I'd let them go. And with black bears, I believed everything the worst about them, but I wanted to find out more. And so a lot of my research was discovering what they're really like. And I found that they were nothing like I grew up believing.
Yeah. I got to ask, the old myth is this, and I've been told this about black bears, about bears in general, but about black bears, growing up in northern Minnesota myself, that if you see a mother and her cub, you must steer clear of those two. Otherwise, the mother will attack. Is there any truth to that?
Oh, that's the biggest misconception about black bears. With grizzly bears, it's a different story. 70% of the killings by grizzly bears are by mothers defending their cubs. But there's never been, there's a couple questionable ones, but none of the killings. There's been about 70 killings by black bears since 1900. And but none of those were by mothers defending their cubs. Actually, oh boy, this is kind of a wild story to tell. But when I was thinking about changing my research methods so that I could do the kind of studies that Jane Goodall did with chimpanzees, and she's actually a member of our board of advisors at the North American Bear Center, a good friend, and I admired her work. In fact, when she and I were both little, it turns out our childhood hero was Tarzan. And anyway, I can get into later if you want how that helped me with catching bears. But so when I was thinking about walking with bears, and what let me think that is that I saw a lot of what appeared to be threatening, aggressive behavior. But then eventually I began to get over my fear enough that I could interpret their behavior in terms of their fear rather than my fear. And after a while, I'd seen so many of these lunges at me, and most frequently by mothers with cubs, that they'd lunge, they'd slap their feet to the ground, they'd blow explosively, look very threatening, and but they never followed through. So when I approached the den and laid down to see what was inside, and the mother with cubs lunged at the entrance, and but she could have got me, but she stopped 2 feet short, slammed her feet down there. So I wanted to test that further by crawling that far into the den to the point where she had hit the ground. Well, I put my camera in front of my face to protect myself and get pictures of what she did. And she lunged again, this time again stopping 2 feet short. So then I was waiting for her to lunge again and get a better picture, and she did something I would not have predicted. She turned her back to me, hid her head in the back corner of the den, leaving the cubs exposed to me. And I couldn't believe it. I couldn't understand it. A couple days later, another den, I did the same thing, same result. So that was one of the turning points, or, confirming points that let me go ahead with walking with bears like Jane Goodall did with chimpanzees, and which broke a lot of the old misconceptions, because one of the big misconceptions is that if a bear loses its fear of people, then it will dare to attack. And in fact, wildlife agencies, that's one of the things that one of the big reasons that they kill any bear that shows confidence around people. The bear is just showing trust. And so, anyway, I'm getting carried away talking here.
No, it's fascinating. It is absolutely fascinating.
Say, Lynn.
Okay. I'll go on a little bit further then. So, along the way, the U.S. Forest Service created a research scientist position for me, and gave me a lot of leeway because, the way I did my research was always to try something new, to learn something new, and they saw the success of that. Well, not to brag, but I have senior authored more scientific peer-reviewed papers about black bears than anyone. And the lucky reason behind that is that they gave me the leeway to do about any kind of research that I could, and so that I would come up with, because I kept thinking of what the kinds of questions do we have to answer to manage bears, and what do we want to know about their lives, and how can we find out those things. And actually, Doug Hajicek, sitting there with you, is a very creative guy, and I'm getting ahead of myself here, but he came up with an idea that was what I consider the epitome of my career. I'll say it since I got into it. We put a webcam in a bear den.
Me, but also you. The Pharaoh fast forwards his favorite foreign film, Powder Donut. Okay, what's my line?
The only line I see here on the script is get options based on your budget with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive.
Oh man, that's a tongue twister, huh? I'm sorry, I'm gonna need a few more minutes. Bulbous Walrus, the Bulbous Walrus.
The name your price tool, only from Progressive.
The owl ran afoul of the comatose coxswain.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
And to explore the least observed part of their life. Actually, half of their life. That's bears in northern Minnesota spend about 6 months of each year in a den. And any attempt to try to observe them got nowhere because what a person would mainly see is how the bear reacted to an observer being at the entrance of the den. So, but with the invention of webcams and the internet and Doug Hajicek's mind, he put together an international team of technologists and flew them up there, and all I had to do was use the trust that I had built with a bear. What was the crucial thing for making it work, to put a den cam in the den, and then he, with his group, connected it to the Discovery Channel, their website, and all of a sudden, that bear named Lily the bear, was the #1 search topic on Google in the world. And people, when she gave birth a couple weeks later, people in 132 countries were watching. And so, and over 500 schools made that den cam part of their daily curriculum, and the students were watching. And as they watched, people learned directly from this mother what bears are really like, and refuted so many of the old misconceptions. And they saw her tenderly respond to each cry of her little female cub that we named, the viewers named, Hope. And, well, it just, that was the thing that I guess most proud of, is that.
Lynn, what was some of the new info that we learned? I mean, there was some things I remember
about black bears, so contrary to what most people believe.
Lynn, what were some of the new things that you learned with that webcam? I mean, did you learn anything about their respiration during hibernation, their activity? I mean, can you share some of the new information you learned?
Yeah, actually, yeah. Just about everything we saw was new to science, and one of the common beliefs about bears, mothers in hibernation, they're the only animal that give birth during their hibernation period. And so, and since cubs are so much smaller than the mother, like a 200-pound mother would give birth to a cub that weighs only 3/4 of a pound.
Geez, that is tiny.
Yeah, amazing, yeah. And their job, and they give birth in January, the coldest part of Minnesota year, and is born with very little hair. And so what the mother does is, well, what people believe, that the mother gave birth in her sleep and woke up in the spring surprised that she had cubs. So what we saw and the world learned, and I remember a wildlife expert on the Chuck Letterman show, David Letterman, yeah, was telling how bears give birth in their sleep, and all what came to be called lily fans, they were thinking, oh my gosh, he hasn't been watching the den cams, because she's fully awake. I mean, she wakes. She would go through. Well, we saw her go through labor, and a couple hours before she gave birth, she was standing up, and I don't know why, slamming her body against the side of the den, And then she began to lick her genitals as she got ready to give birth, and gave birth and welcomed the cub with grunts and tongue clicks. And those are the friendly sounds of bears. She was saying, ooh, 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 ooh. And then tucking the cub underneath her and lying down in a position that would protect it very well from the weather. In the fall, she had raked in a nest about 6 inches deep that would insulate them from the ground. And then she tucked them underneath her, and then put her hind legs forward along her sides, sealing out the drafts from there. And then she crossed her front legs in front of her, tucked her head underneath her chest, so the crown of her head was against her legs. All the drafts were sealed out in that position, breathing on her cubs, licking them to lick the amniotic fluids and stuff off of her, off of the little cub. And then a couple hours after it was born, then the cub found her nipples and started nursing. And none of this had ever been seen before. And well, then as time went on, the cub grew. People saw her grew. About 6 weeks of age, she opened her eyes. And what we eventually learned was that was the beginning of a critical socialization period. That from about the time when they open their eyes at 6 weeks of age to when they leave the den at about 12 weeks of age, during that six week period is when they learn to accept any animal that comes into their life at that time. And so, and we were. Sometimes I'd have to go to the den to clean the lens that the bear had licked and smeared us, so we couldn't see stuff and get data. But it was no problem for me to crawl in and wipe the lens off. And but then the cub became familiar with me doing that from time to time, and grew up accepting. Well, the mother grew up the same way. Her mother was a trusting bear, and had a den that was easy to visit even in the middle of winter, way back in the woods, and. So we put a camera in the entrance of that periodically, and then just backed away. But that cub knew my voice and grew up, and that was Lily, the mother that gave birth before the den cam. So
that was that. Now, Dr. Lynn, I have to ask you: were you shocked by anything that you saw? Because I know you've been working and studying with bears for several years before the webcam came along, but were you shocked and awed by any of the activities and the behaviors?
Well, I had kind of believed, because I'd read it in the scientific literature, somebody surmised that they give birth in their sleep. So I thought that she would be at least half asleep, but women have always told me it was men that thought that the mother could sleep through birth. And so she showed me, and in fact there was a kid's book that we had put together that had that old myth in it. I'd read it so much in the scientific literature, I thought it must be true, and so we went back and republished that book with the truth in it about how they give birth.
So this black bear, Lynn, that you're watching all winter, and that we all got to see, really wasn't hibernating. Not like people think. Can you expel and talk more about just hibernation? I mean, what does it mean to a black bear, and what does it mean maybe from a male black bear instead of a female with cubs?
Okay, yeah, right. Yeah, there's a lot of confusion in the literature about do black bears hibernate or not. And the real thing is that it depends on how well nourished they are, how they spend the winter. If it's a bad food year, and they go into the den kind of lean, enough fat to make it through the winter, but they have to make adjustments to do that. And so they drop into a deeper state of hibernation, such that you can crawl into a den and touch the bear. I found one like that. I shoveled the snow away from the entrance, and I was going to tranquilize it and give it a new radio collar and get the weights and measurements, and all part of the science of bear life. I crawled in, and the bear still was just sleeping with his head tucked under his chest, and so I wondered, hey, maybe I can hear the heart, because I'd never been able to hear the heart of a hibernating bear. And I laid my ear against the bear's chest, and still could not hear it. But then after a few minutes, this bear that was in this deep state, all of a sudden, the heart rate, which is usually around 100, varies with the bear. All of a sudden, the den was filled with about 175 beats per minute heart. And I thought, the bear is waking up. All of a sudden, I didn't have to have my head on the bear's chest. So then I backed out quickly, and outside the den, I took my own heart rate to see if for sure it was the bear that I heard. And the bear, as I was just disappearing out the entrance, the bear raised his head. Eventually, we did some more research on their circulation, worked with a medical specialist, and we found that they restrict, during the winter, these bears that are in this deeper state, restrict their blood flow so not very much of it goes to their arms and legs. So when they get disturbed, like this bear did, then it takes them a while to pump blood, and that's what it was doing with the high heart rate. There was danger, and to the bear thought, and it was trying to pump blood into its arms and legs so that it could defend itself. And and only the fat bears give birth. Only the bears that body
are well
temperature,
nourished. Gotcha.
Yes. These bears that drop into the deeper state drop their body temperature too, down to from usual around 100 down to as low, the lowest ever measured was 88 degrees Fahrenheit. And so, but the mothers that can give birth, they drop their temperature only a tiny bit, 1 to 3 or 4 degrees. Their temperatures are all above 96 degrees. And it really makes a difference how they respond.
Yeah, I would imagine. Now, another myth, I think you already dispelled it, about a sleeping bear, that they just sleep and nobody thought they'd give birth. I remember hearing that in school, by the way, just to add to your point, that bears would sleep during cub birth. but you proved just the opposite. Now, how long does the mother stay awake from hibernation after she gives birth, or does she go back to deep hibernation after the cub is born?
Perfect question. Yes, yeah. She's just like any other mother. She is in there responding to every cry for keeping the cub warm, and then when the cub has to go potty, it cries for her to stimulate urination and defecation, and then she rises up and licks the hindquarters of the cub, and as the cub urinates and defecates, she's ingesting that, keeping the den clean, but also with this with their kind of inefficient yet digestive systems, she's recovering the nutrients that they took from her as milk and recycles it, gets more stuff out of it, and it's a whole system in there for being efficient. So yeah, it's
well, the fact that they can go 6 months, feed their cub, be attentive all winter and not eat anything. It's just, I mean, that's just mind-blowing. In 20, 30
it's the
below
only
weather.
animal that does it like that, yes.
It's just crazy.
Yeah.
And usually, you know, when they come out of the den, they're not that skinny, Joel. I mean, they're really not. They've weight, but they're not like you would think, skin and bones.
Yeah, you would think after all that time laying there in hibernation, not ingesting food, that they would lose a tremendous amount of weight. But that just seems to be just the opposite.
They do lose way more than a bear that's not producing milk. And and part of the thing with the cubs being born so small is that, well, if mothers are borderline fat what happens a lot is that mothers get pregnant in the summer, and in May or June is when they mate, and then the fertilized egg just hangs loose in the uterus until late November or early December, and then it finally implants and develops into an embryo to give birth in January to this little thing, and it's but they can lose that pregnancy at any stage there from the time of implantation. It can, if she's not fat enough to have it grown right, then it'll die in utero and either be absorbed or be stillborn, and then she would eat it, and then or when they're born, if she can't make enough milk, it'll die. And so only the fat ones can be successful. And so
well, you know, strong survive. Isn't there something to that? After all, only the strong survive. And so that would make complete sense that the ones that are most well nourished going into hibernation would fare the best in childbirth and in when they come out of hibernation.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So then she's just making milk, and then they come out in the spring, and then it's she wants to. Well, then she's eating snow in the winter. Oh, another thing that that she disproved. You always hear that black bears don't eat or drink or urinate or defecate, and that data came from captive studies where there was nothing for them to eat or drink. And they would make feces very slowly because in the winter the cells that line the digestive tract, just like any other animal, are dying and being replaced. And bears in hibernation have the ability to recycle their nitrogen, which is the building block of proteins, of amino acids, which are the building blocks of proteins, and then they can make new cells, even though they have no real food intake. For the mothers, it's their own body that they're recycling, when they eat the cub's feces. But then as that continues, as she's losing weight and recycling the feces, she does produce feces herself, and they do defecate. And she's eating snow and drinking that urine, so then they also urinate. So that's another idea that the bears showed to be different.
It seems to be a lot of recycling going on. I mean, that's the name of the game in the den. They don't waste not one thing. Really quick question. Is this hold true for almost all bears, or is this specific to black bears?
Actually, I have to admit that most of what I know is about black bears, and I'd be guessing a bit. I think it's very similar for like brown bears and probably all bears, but they evolved differently. Like black bears is the only bear that evolved in North America. The others were newcomers only 100,000 years ago or so. They came across the Bering Land Bridge and slowly spread across America. Well, there was another one that evolved here too, the giant short-faced bear, and a near relative that made its way to South America. That's the spectacled bear. But black bears, they came here, and that's how they got, I believe, their disposition, where they are not aggressive. They can look aggressive. I mean, we see a lot of behavior that, like I was saying, looks ferocious, looks threatening, but then I learned that was mostly them expressing their own anxieties. And so you can ask any hunter, and he will tell you, I can chase the biggest bear with my littlest hound. Well, they grew up alongside the giant short-faced bear, the saber-toothed cat, the American lion, larger than any lion in the world today, packs of dire wolves that had a powerful bite, lived in packs, and black bears wouldn't have stood a chance against any of these animals, except that they were the only one of them that could climb trees. And they grew up with the attitude of, if you sense danger, run first, ask questions later, and stay near trees. And that's what we see in their behavior today. Now all those Ice Age predators are extinct, and a new round of predators came to America. The grizzly bear, brown bear, came across the Bering Land Bridge. Polar bears did the same. And the third one is people. And that old way of responding to danger helps bears today. And
you're right. Even when
bears can coexist quite peaceably with people,
sure,
if people can get over their exaggerated fear of bears and accept bears and not confuse them with grizzlies, which are much more aggressive, much more defensive than black bears.
Say, Lynn, I got a question. Obviously, your research bears for all the years have been radio colored, so you can find them, so you can locate them and use telemetry. But how did you ever go from the transition in the mindset where you could put a radio collar on a bear without drugging the bear, which is insane because you have to actually, connect this heavy-duty collar with bolts and a wrench.
Yeah.
And you started doing it without drugging the bears. And these are wild bears. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, actually, throughout my whole career, as I was trying to learn how truly dangerous bears were or weren't, I was always looking for kinder, gentler ways to do research. And so eventually, as I began to build trust with bears, trusted them enough myself to let them build trust in me. And early on, I did not touch the bears because I thought I'd see their emotions, initially anxiety about being touched, and they would whirl with their mouth open, and I never got bit, but I saw that motion, and I thought I don't want to ruin their trust by doing things that scare them, so I didn't try to touch them. But eventually, I saw that trust was the universal language, and and once I could touch them, I can convey to them, to build a deeper trust by conveying that I was not a danger to them, that I would stroke them down their back firmly, and I'd see their arch their back like a cat does sometimes. That felt good to them, and pretty soon then I would touch them everywhere around their neck, on their head, not their ears, because they're always trying to listen, and that would make them pull their head away because they couldn't hear as well, because their lives are governed by fear and food, and they live to try to minimize danger to themselves and to find food. So anyway, pretty soon I could touch them everywhere. I could examine them for injuries, whatever, and could put radio collars on them.
Dr. Rogers, how long did it take to build that trust with these bears? Or was it almost instantaneous, or was it baby steps?
It varied with the bear. I view every behavior like having a bell-shaped curve around it. There was a lot of them in the middle, but then there were some out in each tail. Some of them would build trust quickly, some never could. And for the ones, that could do it quickly, it might be just a matter of months. Other bears, and if I could interact with them during that critical socialization period between 6 and 12 weeks of age, then they would grow up with that trust. So
gotcha. And that makes total sense. They're developing themselves at that point. They're developing themselves and what to be afraid of at that point as well. So introducing yourself as a non-threatening individual while they're in that formative years would go a long way in being able to gain the trust to be able to put a radio collar on and interact with them without fear.
And a big year with big breakthroughs in that building trust was 1985, because that gets into a different story just for a second here. That most people believed that bears get in trouble because people feed them, and the bears become habituated. That means accustomed to people, or food conditioned. That means drawn to people because they know that people provided food. And a lot of this would be through their garbage can or their bird feeders. And then in some years, bears got into a lot of trouble. I mean, they were going from house to house looking for food. And I thought, there's one thing they never mentioned as the reason that the bears do this, and that's hunger. It's not rocket science. And
sure, they're looking for the easy meal. Gotcha.
Yeah, everybody believed that they were looking for they were lazy, looking for an easy meal. What they didn't know, and what I discovered in my research, you get a year with a drought or a late spring frost that kills the berries or shrivels them up with a drought, all of a sudden there's nothing for them to really eat in the forest, nothing that can really sustain them. And so they are desperate. Cubs are dying. Yearlings are dying. Mothers are losing their pregnancies. They're desperate. And that's when they're really looking for food. So I thought, instead of shooting these bears, if a person would feed them in such a year, it's not a perfect solution, but if you wanted a choice between killing the bears or giving them food to get through that bad year, I wanted to see what would really happen. Do these bears become lazy and look for and go to that food source all the time? And I found no. They prefer the wild food, the variety of wild food, and all the different nutrients and the cancer fighting kinds of things that are in berries. And so I did an experiment, and as a research scientist for the Forest Service, with the blessing of the U.S. Forest Service, because it's a way that could reduce problems in campgrounds, and that's what I did. I did it a quarter mile from a campground, wondering now how well would this really work. I was pretty sure it would work, or I wouldn't have done it. But I thought it's possible that I'll be concentrating bears near the Forest Service campground, a quarter mile away, and then as they lose fear of people, they'll dare to go into the campground even more. Or will I draw bears away from the campground, and where all they get is tidbits of garbage from a dumpster or left on people's tables, or would substantial food at a diversionary feeding site solve the problem? And that is exactly what happened. Problems at the campground had been annual up until 1984. And then suddenly, with my diversionary feeding site, I drew the bears away, and there were no problems in the campground that year.
Is that something
way different than most people would think?
Is that something other campgrounds, do they use that method? Or is that it never happened?
Nobody had done that for several reasons. one is the old belief that if you feed a bear, you lead it into trouble. And if it's not a situation where you want a bear, yes, food can lead bears into trouble, especially when it's food in campgrounds. But if it's a place where you'd rather have the bear than in a campground, food is a very powerful tool that can lead bears out of trouble. So, well, the first year I did that experiment, it made problems in the campground go to zero. And I didn't tell the campground that I was doing the study, but I'd stop over and talk to the campground manager a bit. And what kind of trouble are you having this year? They said it's the first year we've ever had where we had no bears going up to people for food, even though I was hand feeding bears a quarter mile away. And so some bears had gotten so that I could hand feed them even. And but I didn't make a lot of progress that first year because natural food was abundant enough that bears were not too much of a problem anywhere. So, but the next year was the worst berry crop failure in DNR records, in Department of Natural Resources records. And it was the most bear complaints statewide, still a record in Minnesota. And I got more bears that summer, and they were hungrier and would take greater chances to get food. And so I was beginning to think of bears' behavior in terms of their fear rather than my fear. So if I'd see a bear that there was food and I was present, and the bear would do a lunge, slap the ground, slam its feet down hard on the ground, and then blow explosively, I'd think I'd say the bear is expressing its anxiety, and I'd lay down instead of making myself look big and trying to scare the bear away to save my life and everything, like would be
Dr. Rogers. I don't mean to interrupt you, but my whole life I've been told if you see a bear to make yourself look large, you're saying lay down, that you laid down. So if you do encounter a bear in the wild,
that one too, yes, that people, they always ask, what do I do if I see a bear? And I stopped giving advice because the advice all sounds like do this or you will be killed, and you just increase the person's fear of bears and reduce his willingness to coexist. It makes them sound like they're dangerous animals. You got to make yourself look big to save your life. And but what I did is I'd lay down and I'd just speak in a gentle voice, and I would throw food to it, and I'd throw food closer and closer. And at first they'd only dare to come so close. But as they saw that I was not a threatening individual, and that I was responding to their fear and trying to calm it, eventually I could lay there and get them so close that I'd be laying on my stomach, and they'd put their head under my face to get the food that I put right there by my chest. And so then I would, when I was getting later, I didn't do this at first. I just was happy that a bear would come that close. But years later, when I get them that close, then I'd extend one arm forward, and then they would get close enough that I'd be touching their shoulder with my hand. Then that would make them spring back like they were on springs. And then they'd look, as my hand. They'd sniff it and then say, "Oh, it's okay." And then I could touch them again, and they would accept it. And then I could even then move my hand up onto their shoulder, and be stroking them. And that's how I was able to get use touch to build trust. And that's what led to the radio collaring like that, and be able to get much more data from a bear, because I could examine it for scars and wounds and learn a lot more.
Are bears, are they social by nature? I mean, do they come together? I don't want to say like kumbaya as a community, like holding hands, but are bears friendly with each other outside of mating? Obviously, during mating time, it's completely different. But when bears encounter each other in the wild, are they social? Do they show any qualities of communication?
It depends on the age, the sex, and how abundant food is. If food is scarce, they're competitors. If food is very abundant, that's when they show their playful side. And you get adolescent, mostly males, but sometimes females are part of the group. And they even travel together for days to play. And it's really play fighting. The same movements that you would see in a fight, like in a mating battle between males over a female, fighting over a female, and so it's kind of their practice, I guess, growing up. But they love to play them. So but the difference is, we often see play fights like that on TV as if it's real fighting, because they're biting each other, and they're very vigorous and quick in their actions. But play is silent. Real aggression is loud. And so if they can tape those sounds and play them during a fight, then it comes off as a fight. But
can you quantify how dangerous a black bear is?
Go ahead.
Can you quantify, how dangerous a black bear is compared to other animals or other dangers that we live with when we go into the forest?
Oh boy. Well, yeah, in a way, it's only about one black bear in a million that kills somebody. And why they do it there's a big difference between black bears and grizzly bears. Grizzly bears, 70% of the killings are by mothers defending their cubs. Another 10% is bears defending a food cache. And beyond that, it's the accidental encounter close up where there's a fight or flight response.
We can sum up McDonald's new crispy chicken sandwich in one word: crispy, but also juicy and tender. Okay, it's crispy, juicy, tender, all one word. But then also pickle. Oh, and potato bun, which is two words. Okay, we can't sum up our new crispy chicken sandwich in one word, so you'll just have to try it to understand it. Order ahead on the McDonald's app at participating McDonald's. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Me, but also you. The Pharaoh fast forwards his favorite foreign film, Powder Donut. Okay, what's my line?
The only line I see here on the script is get options based on your budget with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive.
Oh man, that's a tongue twister, huh? I'm sorry, I'm gonna need a few more minutes. Bulbous Walrus, the Bulbous Walrus.
The Name Your Price tool, only from Progressive.
The owl ran afoul of the comatose coxswain.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
And then, depending how scared the bear is, how much it feels like it has to fight. And most people think that it's good to keep bears afraid of people because then the bear is more apt to run when they see it at a distance. But when that bear that you've done everything to scare so that it's afraid of people, that's the bear you do not want to encounter with a sudden close-up thing, because it's going to be so scared. That's the bear that'll attack.
Right.
And so where I feel safest is when I used to do lead tours to view grizzly bears up in Alaska. Bears that were used to seeing people, no problem. Actually, I've never had a problem with a grizzly bear or a polar bear. And the bears that were used to seeing people, it's kind of interesting in a way, and it sounds reckless and terrible, but I never had a problem. And that is with my groups. If bears approach most groups, then the group, the tour leader, he would have the people open their jackets and look big and get a big plastic bag out of their waders that you wear because you're wading through streams, crossing streams a lot. Pull a big plastic bag out of and shake it, and that noise and the strange view will make the bears run, even if they're used to people. And with these bears that are used to people, they will dare to run away, turn their back, and escape and not feel like they have to attack. And so what I would do, though, I get off the boat that we would live on, and we come ashore, get up on a ridge, look over a big area, actually Hallow Bay, up in Katmai National Park, and count maybe 30 bears in a 2 square mile area that we could see with binoculars. And then we pick out the bear that we want to get near. And maybe it'd be a beautiful blonde female with cubs, and we watch as the male would come near, and she'd go ferociously after that male. And I'd say, that's the bear we want to get near. That's the one, and she's got cubs and everything. So to get there, we might have to go past other bears that weren't our goal, and so you judge each bear as you go by. And if the bear is grazing and it looks up and goes back to grazing, fine. But when you get close enough that bear looks at you and looks away, it's looking to check its escape route, whether it's safe from other bears if it ran in that direction. So that's when we say no closer, and we veer way out around the bear so as not to disturb it. And then finally we get to this, maybe a half a mile, we get to that blonde female that we want to photograph. And when she looks away, get close enough that she looks at us and looks away, we immediately lay down. And then just lay there for a half hour. And snap pictures from ground level, which is the best level for the best picture. And then she'll get used to us and see that we're not a threat. And then we either would move closer, or we'd see what direction she was feeding on a patch of vegetation and see where that led, and we'd move so that the sun would be behind us for the best pictures, and that she would approach us as close as she wanted to come. And the cubs...
So it's all about allowing Oh, sorry, doctor. But what I was saying, it's all about
right.
allowing them to choose on their own terms how close they're coming, rather than you directly approaching. You're allowing it to dictate the circumstances of the visit.
Because we don't want to appear as a threat. We want to be non-threatening. So then you get the privilege of having the cubs come closer. They're more curious, and she's seen people before, and they come closer, and it's amazing. And so we had just amazing experiences, never a problem. Nobody got hurt. We never even had a bear get aggressive towards us because it was all on their terms.
Say, Lynn, still got a little bit of things I want to cover. How can you quantify, though, how many black bear attacks, we're talking about black bears, compared to lightning strikes, where people die of lightning or bee stings? I mean, is there a comparative? How dangerous what are your chances of running into a black bear in the forest and being killed?
Very, very slim, and let me get into that, but you just reminded me of, I was on the track of going that way, and then I went off on a tangent. The difference between black bears and grizzly bears is why they attack. Grizzly bears, it's defensive. Black bears, they usually want to avoid trouble, and in their interactions with the person that they are expressing their anxiety towards, they want to they show restraint. It's just like the bear that I said that when I crawled into the den, it showed restraint, and instead of attacking, it actually turned its back to me and hit its head in the back corner of the den, and which just showed me how not dangerous black bears are when they bluff charge somebody, and which you can tell it's a bluff when they act extra ferocious. I mean, they're not just running at you or stalking you or something. They're coming at you trying to look ferocious with each bound, slamming their feet down and blowing. And it looks really scary, but when you see that, it shows that it's all talk. They got a problem and they want to talk about it. And if you are doing research, then you would respond in a way that you might want to watch the bear and show that you're not a threat, let the bear calm down, and maybe be able to watch it a bit and learn from it. If you just want the bear to go away, then, the bear is already afraid. They're very easy to chase away. And if you don't dare to do that, it's in a campsite or something, get your whole group together. I've never seen the bear would even think about, black bears even think about standing up to a stampede of people. And so, and then along that line, though, I'm getting off off on a tangent again, but it fits in, and that is, I remember I used to be a mailman, and in the early to mid '60s, I was trying to earn money to go back to college to study wildlife, and it was a fun job because dogs. I remember this one German Shepherd. He would attack, and I got scars from it. Other bears, I'd come along, they'd just fall in line. They want to follow me to the end of the route. I'd have, half a dozen dogs trailing along, and it made it exciting and fun. But
sure.
But with the bears, but then pepper spray came out, and all of a sudden I was king of the neighborhood. And bears that would come ferociously barking at me, one drop of pepper spray, capsaicin, hot pepper ingredient in the eye, and that bear would be running and yelping so I was at a bear conference, and they were talking about what caliber gun a person should rifle a person should carry in bear country. And I raised my hand and I said, but here we are, we're the International Bear Association. Shouldn't we be looking for a non-lethal deterrent? I remember when I was a mailman, pepper spray really worked on dogs, and I'll bet it would work the same on bears. Yeah, but they say, who's going to test that? How do you know it's not going to make a bear mad? And you're face to face with a wild bear squirting out with something. You're hoping that a drop in the eye will make it run away. What if it goes the other way? And I says, I think that they would run, because if skunks got killed every time they squirted something, that would have never evolved. And
so true. Very, very true. Doctor, I have a question about bears and their numbers and population growth. Has the explosion of wolves in our area, specifically northern Minnesota, has that impacted the numbers of bears, or are they not really concerned with timber wolves? Are they not really bothered by them, as in our timber wolves stalking bears?
Yeah, I was able to observe some stuff like that, and they don't get along that well. I've seen it go both ways. I remember watching from an airplane as a bear saw a wolf and went after it, put the run on the wolf. But wolves have killed bears in dens. A bear that I tracked for years, one time denned in a den that a pack of 9 wolves could get to the bear from 2 sides, and they drove that bear out of the den, and the bear abandoned its cubs, and the cubs immediately ate the cubs, and the bear ran to the closest tree that it could climb, but with 9 wolves, it wasn't able to turn its back without getting attacked, so it had to fight a bit with its back to the tree at the base for a while, and there was a pool of blood from the bear, and there was wolf fur and bear fur, part of a wolf tooth, and then finally the bear was able to whirl around and get up the tree before the bears, and but then the scratches on the tree showed that after climbing the tree, it slid back down and went back to its den. And there it either died from its injuries, or the wolves came back and finished it off. And then they pulled a lot of fur off the bear and dragged it over to a clear area, no fur, because they don't want to eat that. And that's where they ate the bear. And the droppings in the area included claws from the cubs. And so they can be a danger. Go ahead.
How big are bear populations? Are they bigger now than they were 100 years ago? Are they smaller? Are they doing, is the population exploding? Because I live in the suburbs and I had a bear on my beach. And I'm 13 miles north of Minneapolis. So, explain.
That, you're going to make me start bragging here. When I first came to Minnesota, and I was just very lucky that, that happened that I started out, I just was lucky as a student at Michigan State University, a junior, was able to be picked out of many to have a student aid position capturing and ear tagging wild bears. And I went crazy for that position. And I had nothing else to do. I caught as many bears in a month as they had ever caught in a year. And that got the attention of the world's pioneer of bear field research. And he came and worked with me for a week and invited me to be his grad student. And I came to Minnesota and saw that it was a terrible situation for bears. Fear was rampant. There were bounties on bears. They were classified as bounties to be poisoned, shot, or trapped and shot any time of year in any number by any person. No protection. And the population had been decimated. And
to what numbers? To what numbers, Lynn? What were the state's population?
The best guess, because there had been no real study, was that there were fewer than 6,000 in the state. In one small protected area in northeastern Minnesota that included the Boundary Waters, and but over most of the state there were very few bears, and so I and Wally and Mary Lee Dayton had provided the money. They were the owners of Target stores.
Sure.
And then Dayton Hudson Corporation and stuff like that. They had brought me here at the request of that professor, and my job was to learn about the bear population and see if we could get some information that would change management. And so I began, by that time I had gotten over some of my fear of bears, and I knew that they weren't animals that deserved that kind of treatment. And I ran into a hunting leader that felt the same, and then there were a couple legislators that joined the team, Representative Cal Larson, and
it took a team. I mean, it took a lot of people coming together to save these bears to get things back on track.
Yeah, and then Senator Cliff Uckelberg, and I worked with the DNR officials, wildlife officials, and so we introduced legislation, and I gave lectures all over Minnesota, and I was getting so much media coverage because I was doing the first black bear field study ever done in Minnesota, and was able to change attitudes a bit, and get this legislation passed that, because of the rampant fear, had never been able to pass before. People wanted to be able to shoot any bear they see and get rid of this danger, thinking of their kids and thinking, what if they were out in the woods walking and came across a bear? They didn't want bears around. So I started changing attitudes back then, and then the DNR asked me, a little grad student, to write the regulations, because what the legislation was to elevate bears from varmints to big game animals, give them the respect and protection of a big game animal.
What year was that, Lynn?
That was 1971 that passed in the spring.
Okay.
And then they asked me to write the regulations for hunting, and I wrote regulations that would let the bear numbers increase. I reduced the hunting season from 52 weeks to 6, and I had it start in mid-September to give some of the pregnant females, they're the first ones to go into dens to allow some of them to enter dens before the season started. And, I introduced something that sounds bad, but it's good, and that is baiting. Because the biggest problem in bear hunting is wounding loss. And so then what happens is if you make it sporting, the more sporting you get, the bigger the wounding loss. And that means the hunters, like they're doing a drive through the forest and there's a bear running away, and they take a shot at it, they wound it, they don't find it. Okay, nobody fills their license. That's just a wasted bear. And how many they might kill before they get one that they can put their tag on, nobody knows. Managers, wildlife managers wouldn't know. You wouldn't know what you're doing to the population, and then the bears are suffering. And
I know in other states, Dr. Rogers, is they allow, what I don't agree with is chasing a bear as the dogs in some states, because that does horrible things to the bear. Number one, if you put a run on a bear for a really far distance with these hounds, think of the calories if you don't harvest this bear is expending. So you're almost, you could kill it in that regard as well, because it's expending all this energy to get away from the hunter. How do you feel about using dogs to put a run on a bear? I mean, I am actually a bear hunter. I have been here in Minnesota, so I'm very familiar with what you're talking about with the baiting stuff such as that. But I also have friends east of here.
Let me finish the baiting one thing first, and then I'll get into the dog thing, because that's another battle that I fought. But with the baiting, what that does, you have a tree stand, and the bear comes to your bait. It's safer for people because you're shooting down at the bear rather than through the leaves that have not yet fallen, and there's hikers enjoying the beautiful fall colors hiking through the forest. And so it's safer for people, and it's more humane for the bears because you can wait for a killing shot. And anyway, there was more stuff I did to make it more humane, reduce wounding loss by regulating the kind of gun that you could use, not some little gun. Anyway, but then years later, the state wanted to introduce hound hunting, and that I didn't think of in itself as so bad, because the wounding would be minimized by the fact that if they wounded a bear, they could put the dogs on the trail, track it down, and kill it, and eventually tree it, and then kill it. But what turned out to be a bad thing was the practice period. Running bears with dogs all summer, not killing them, but just harassing them, and I didn't like that going on. And landowners, wouldn't like the idea of in this lake country of a pack of hounds chasing a bear through their yard when they're trying to have a nice, quiet summer day. So, and then I came across a video that made me sick. It was confiscated from hound hunters out in Oregon, that they had taken a video of, because the practice period is when you want to train the dogs to be aggressive toward bears. And the best way to do that without the hounds getting hurt, which is another inhumane part of that kind of hunting, they want to, if they find a little bear that the hounds can attack, they do everything they can to have the dogs learn to attack that bear. And so here was a pack of hounds that had, it was either a big cub or a little yearling, and they had that little bear spread-eagled with dogs hanging on every leg and biting. Somehow the bear got away and got down under the roots of a tree, and you think, good, the bear escaped. Stop that torture. The hunter puts a pole down in there and forces the bear out to face the dogs again. So when the legislature was considering this new idea of having hound hunting in Minnesota, we showed that video. That turned everybody against the hound hunting. And they asked the hunting leader that was trying to put that through, can you control your hunters from this kind of behavior? Well, he hemmed and hawed. They asked the DNR head there, can you control this through, with your people? Nope, there's no way we could. And so it was voted down, and it never came up again.
Why don't one thing I'd like to talk about a little bit, Lynn, before we let you out of here, because we only have about 10 minutes left, is when Hollywood came a knocking, specifically Doug Hajicek, the man that walks the bears. What was that like to film with Doug? That must have been quite the experience for you.
Yeah, no, I learned a ton from Lynn. It was just really cool being in close proximity with bears. But Lynn, do you remember the time, and I don't even know I'm sure you had done it before because you did it with such confidence, but you actually took the cubs out of the den to weigh them, right in front of this wild blackberry. And yeah, you knew her, but boy, that takes a lot of, fortitude on your end because you don't really know what's going to happen. But what was that like, Lynn, to take this little cub from the mother and just to weigh it?
That I have not done a lot. That might have been Jerry's cub. Jerry was. I'm trying to think. Oh, I think that was Blackheart's cub.
Yeah, it was Blackheart. Yep, it was.
Yeah, right. You and me, we went there. Yeah. And this is way back. This is in 2000, and we didn't do the big den cam thing until 2010, I think. And but yeah, with Blackheart, I had enough trust for that mother that I could pick up that cub. Yeah, I remember that very well. Yeah, that's a good scene in that.
That was tense. That was a tense moment for me because I'm filming this, and I remember you just looked at me and you go, "Well, here goes nothing."
Yeah.
But the point is, you wanted to weigh the cub. You wanted to get a weight on the cub, which was really cutting edge without really. I mean, think about other DNR people. They have to tranquilize the mother.
Yes, right.
You didn't have to bother.
Well, that's one thing that I've tried to avoid. That's one of my biggest things. I found the problem with early tranquilizers, how they were not safe for the bear, and had those banned, and then if I could move beyond tranquilizing and get the same data, it's way better for the bears, safer for them. And so with Blackheart, I had enough trust that here was a cub sitting. Actually, I got a good video too another time. I crawled into that den that had two entrances. I crawled into one and she was out. She came back, and then that was a little bit much for her that I was in the den with her cubs. And she right into the camera, did a wonderful lunge, slap and blow. And I caught it on camera. Usually I wouldn't be ready. It comes suddenly. But anyway, and she did not follow through. I knew she wouldn't. I backed away. She could be there with her cubs, and it's just amazing what we've been able to show, that bears are not the danger that most people think and is possible to coexist with them. So, but yes, with that kid there later, we got there, and I lifted up one of the cubs. I weighed it, and the mother then is looking at me, and she is getting a little agitated. And
but she never growled. All she did was, I remember she just did this, just kind of, it's very concerned. She swayed back and forth, but that was it.
Concerned about the cub, actually, that sound. And so then I gave it to her. I think she took it gently in her mouth and tucked it back into the den.
That was an amazing moment to be there for that.
Yeah,
that must have been. That must have been just something else to see, having that happen right in front of you, Doug.
Okay, Lynn, we've got 5 minutes left. Okay. Bears are moving into our territory, but we're moving into their territory on a very regular basis. Probably more so now than ever. What advice do you have for people?
Well, I can say this. You're partly responsible for that because you did the first documentary, and there's been, I think, 7 others since. And these were mostly worldwide documentaries that really changed people's attitudes. And as with all the media coverage I was getting with my research, people were seeing that bears were not what they thought. And and it used to be a major problem of landowners shooting bears. And if a bear, they would always say, I felt like it was a threat, and so I shot it. And but that went way down. And as people became more willing to coexist with bears, they let the bear population expand. Right now, there's a bear that's going around in Ely, going to houses and everything. And in the old days, this bear would have never got that far. It would have been shot. First time it was seen in town, here's a bear that dared to come into town. This is a bear that would dare to attack people. It has to be killed. Now, they have the North American Bear Center is in Ely, so that's helped. And so people have a way different attitude towards black bears today, especially in Minnesota, but spreading across the country. And so the population has expanded greatly across North America, close to 1 million now, when it used to be down, 500,000.
Wow.
And
that is amazing, Dr. Rogers. That is very, very amazing. Don't mean to cut you off here, but we're running out of time. But if you want to hear more about what he's talking about, bearstudy.org is a great website to go visit. Of course, that is the home of the Wildlife Research Institute up there in Ely, Minnesota. Love that little city up there, and I intend on going back. And if you like what you heard tonight, this is Untold Radio. Visit us at untoldradio.com for more great programming like this. Dr. Rogers, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Let me say one more thing. Bear.org is the North American Bear Center website, and it's filled with education. That's my education outlet for the stuff that we've learned. And the bearstudy.org is the research-oriented website.
Very, very cool. Visit both of them. Enjoy it, and thank you so much for changing our minds on bears. There's no longer a fear and stigma about bears. We all can coexist with them peacefully. Until next time, guys, take care of each other, love each other. This is myself, Joel Sturgis, and Mr. Doug Hajicek. We are signing off.
Streaming only on Peacock.
John Wayne Gacy killed 32.
Straight from the killer's mouth.
They want you to believe that I alone committed these murders.
The new gripping 6-part documentary series, John Wayne Gacy, Devil in Disguise. All episodes streaming now, only on Peacock.